Wow, that was
Welcome.
weird.
I wanted to keep the confusion down, and I know that people were very worried about. I know Wednesday. I guess what I'm trying to do is I'm branding. That's what the kids say, right? They brand things.
You're failing at keeping confusion down right now. I'll say that.
They brand
And you
things.
forgot to turn the ticker off again.
No, I was going to get there. But I'm branding right now is what I'm doing, and that's what the kids say. And so all the outside the in Q&A sessions, I've had the beard, and then Wednesday I did the concert, and I didn't have the beard, and people were very, very concerned with that. We had a good chunk of people. I think. Thank you so much for turning out. There's a good 1,000 people that turned out to watch that live, and a lot of people. It was a really nice camaraderie. But I just wanted to brand the two different broadcasts. So let's kick this show off, Dale, and we'll get started.
Are you really going to wear that the whole time?
Well, I'm waiting for the music intro, and then I can,
Is that a good?
There we go. See, that's the way it's done.
I gotta move my.
Oh my God, where'd your beard go?
Right, I know,
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Holy.
It's working its way back already.
Yeah.
So welcome
weird.
everybody. Welcome Facebook Live. This is Travis Larson Band Outside the Inn Q&A session / discussion. Tonight we have our very first outside guest from the extended TLB family that's going to be hanging out with us, and you'll find out who that is in about 25 minutes or so. So before that, we'll get into a few subjects. Of course, we want to keep the show fun and upbeat, but there is a slight elephant in the room. Last week, we were talking about Dale's dad not doing all that well. And unfortunately, we lost him Sunday morning after the last podcast. So just want to say, I want to personally say a few things, and I'll give it to you guys to say whatever you'd like. But Mr. Moon was the perfect combination to me of a guy who was very, very tolerant and a guy who was completely OCD, and he made the absolute perfect drummer for our band. And he was a guy that was a little bit, kind of, it's, he's a hard guy to describe, but Dale is a good combination of everything that he was, and also able to do what he does because his dad was tolerant enough to let him make all that noise in a tiny little, not so extravagant house in Eureka, California. So thank you, Carl. We love you. And that's what I wanted to say to Mr. Moon.
Thank you. I will say I appreciate a lot of feedback, and a lot of people reached out, and I do appreciate it. I would like to say I'm okay. It's always sad to lose a loved one, but this is one of those situations with progressive disease like Parkinson's. I've sort of incrementally grieved my father along the way. So at this point, I'm happy to see him be able to stop working so hard, if that makes sense. And my father was a wonderful man, a weird, awesome, kind dude, and
much like yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. So I am doing okay, and I appreciate everybody's reaching out, and please everybody feel licensed to enjoy themselves, and I'm doing all right.
You're not to get off the subject real quick though, Dale, your volume is a little low on your vocal. I'm not sure if that got squashed based on the drums, but it seemed okay earlier.
How is this?
It's a little better. Jen, say something.
Something.
Do a quick one there. Say something again, Dale.
How is this? I can keep coming up.
That's better.
Okay. Okay. Tell me if I'm too loud.
Let's just leave it at that for the moment.
Okay, cool.
So I'll wait until the Harris boys give me another beat on how it sounds. But yes, so we just wanted to acknowledge Dale's dad. Jen, did you have anything or?
I don't have much to add. I mean, Dale and I have talked over the last week about a lot of these things. We both have, shared losses in these regards. And so he knows how I feel, and I'm sure everybody else understands. And
Yep.
yeah, I think Dale's doing okay.
Yeah.
Doing okay. And I have a lot of support and love and support from my band also, and family. And I got to be there with them. What were the odds of that in this situation? Yeah. So all things considered, it was as good as the passing of a loved one could have gone. I hope that doesn't sound
right. Yeah. So onward and upward. And I was saying before the webcast started, because for the viewer out there, we kind of convene like this a couple minutes beforehand to make sure everything works. And I said, in this instance, what would Rush do? And because that's what we say about everything. And Rush would respectfully mention the elephant in the room and then say, okay, let's move on to being goofy dorks like we are. So
exactly.
So that's what everybody's really here to hang out. And Steve says volume wise better, but a little more would help.
From Dale?
Yeah, just testing audio, folks, just so you know.
How about that? Going third person from Dale?
Yeah, that was weird.
How's that?
I'm going to just say it's okay because you guys send the same to me now.
I see. Okay.
So
maybe you're not speaking as loud as you were earlier, Dale.
Maybe, yeah.
Remember when you were yelling at me?
Yeah. It was heated earlier. No.
So let's talk a little bit about all this crazy stuff that we're dealing with technologically, like what people are watching right now, and the performing on live streams, all that kind of stuff. So we have a fairly anal retentive level of quality we're willing to put out, and we worked. Going back to several weeks when this all first started. Dale and I jumped headfirst into this. Number one, as we mentioned in the first webcast, so Dale could start teaching, and that was kind of the first realm of getting into this technology. And then it was okay. So at some point, let's do a show where we play music. So I did that last Wednesday. Again, thank you guys so much for tuning into that. It was overwhelmingly great response and so much fun. And I know these guys even had fun. Jen told me she was having a blast interacting with everybody and knowing who everybody
on your Facebook page.
Yeah, she had to log into my Facebook because she doesn't actually have a public personal Facebook page. So if she wants to comment on stuff, she has to either do it as well. Here's this starts a good conversation of all the technical nightmares that is Facebook Live. She couldn't comment as the Jennifer Young page, but she can as soon as the live stream is over. But during the live stream, she can't. I don't know. So we're getting ready for the live stream. Over a period of a couple of weeks, probably done 30 tests with this thing privately to make sure that it's all going to work. Figured out that you have to, from the camera that we were using, you had to flip it so that it wouldn't show up backwards on Facebook. Got that all dialed. Went through days and days and days of getting the audio properly dialed without weird audio digital artifacts and all these things. And then 5 minutes to hit, and Jennifer was there to help me. We have an office, like a Precision Records office at the Treehouse Studios here where I am. And so we were being responsibly social distancing, and she was in the Treehouse office with a couple of office computers, monitoring everything, making sure it was going to go okay. And I go to start the live stream, and I go to flip the shot, and all of a sudden it stretches to 4:3 aspect ratio in a 16:9 widescreen, which is what you guys are watching now. So when it did that, all of a sudden it looked like a kung fu movie, right? And I go, oh, geez, okay, let me start over. Let me try again. Let me close the app. Let me FaceTime my friend Larry Mitchell, who's in Alabama, and he was right there for me. He goes, okay, here's what you got to do. Try tilting the iPad, try tilting it back. then flip it, and then try tilting it back. I couldn't get this thing to not be a 4:3 aspect ratio every time you flipped it. So, and then I tried it later on after the thing, just a fast forward, and it doesn't do it on other devices, not all devices. So all the little idiosyncrasies of this thing. But right before we're going to go on the air, and this is why we were 7 minutes late, I'm trying to decide whether I'm going to look like a kung fu movie or whether I'm going to be backwards playing left-handed. And I'm like fiddling with this thing frantically. And I'm like, Jen, I can't figure out whether I need to go kung fu movie or I need to be backwards. And she's like, kung fu movie.
I voted kung fu all the way. I love kung fu movies.
And I said, no. I watched Andy McKee last night. Andy McKee was backwards. I'm going to be backwards. I think it's going to be less weird if I'm backwards because people will figure it out. And then so I start to go on, and she goes, well, make sure you block all the TLBs in the room because there's some TLB logos in the room. Wow. I'm like, so then I'm like getting rid of TLB logos, kind of for a quick thing. Like, for instance, the drums back there or TLB logo, anything that would be backwards. So not that people aren't going to notice I'm playing left-handed. Anyway.
Yeah, blatantly backwards.
So it's almost impossible to make that stuff work reliably ever because it's just so many things. But I will say that I've dug into some new technology. I'm working on potentially being able to do HD next time. And so next time isn't planned, scheduled yet. It is planned. It's not scheduled yet, but it's probably going to be in a couple of weeks.
I'm going to just chime in.
What's that? I'm going
to chime in, even though I wasn't on that webcast, because almost like a character witness, if you're not suitably outraged by what happened to Travis here, let me tell you, like Travis said, he will call me on or Larry or whomever. I will call him. I'll call anybody who I can get to. He works out all of the details, and he works out all the details that haven't happened but might happen. It's catastrophic thinking for every possible scenario, and then to get burned, it's infuriating just to hear about.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
You should have seen him like shaking before, and I knew he had to play, but he was just visibly
well, you get everything totally dialed. Where the guitars are sitting there tuned, everything sounds fantastic. You've been streaming for an hour beforehand privately, making sure it all works, and then you go to do it for real, and all of a sudden, it's all out the window. And that's a gig. That's just everything about a regular gig. You go into this thinking it's going to be cool because I'm going to have my setup. It's going to be tried and true. It's all sound checked and everything's ready to go. I don't have to move gear at the end of the night. I can finish up and I can go in and I can have a bite to eat. And then all of a sudden you're sweating and your adrenaline is rushing and you realize all you guys are out there waiting. And, because you could see the stream loading up. You could see people.
They're like, where is he?
where is Travis? And I'm like, 5 minutes behind, 7 minutes behind. So got a couple of comments here just, to say hey to everybody. Somebody said, never heard anyone ask the drummers turn up.
Nice.
Burner says you sounded great, right or left-handed. You are ambivalent.
Oh, I'm not ambivalent.
Nice.
Ambidextrous.
Ambidextrous and ambivalent. He's very often ambivalent. Agreed. Yeah. He's like,
So,
whatever.
Anyway, it's so hard to figure this stuff out, and we try so hard to make it like a really good experience. And so at the end of the day, even though I was left-handed, it really was a great experience, and I'm so glad that everybody came to hang out. I do appreciate the support. I'm going to try and do some more of those. I don't know if I'm going to do. I'm afraid of burning everybody out. I'd rather make it a special thing, so I'm going to do them. But I don't know that I'm going to do like a weekly thing like we're doing here. I don't mind burning them out so much with us slapping our drums.
This is more like being in the van, and the other ones are more like being at a show. So, this is
right.
the back seat.
I'm not getting mine on my Facebook feed again, but that's nothing new.
Wayne says, Jen is undercover Travis. It's science.
Right.
Talking about
always the man behind the curtain somehow.
Yep.
I had such a great time watching Travis play, and I was like, yes, in the other room in the office, and I was like clapping. I'm like, yay, it was so fun. And then getting to chat with you guys out there, even though I'm under the moniker Travis Larson. It was really fun. So thanks, Travis, for doing that. And I'm sure we all look forward to the next one.
Chuck says, enter the Travis. Like Enter the Dragon.
Yep. I'm also like you, Travis, where I'm like, I got my iPad right here. It's in line of sight with my computer, but of course it wouldn't consider like rolling my Facebook feed. My phone, well, I can look down and squint, but no way my iPad.
Squinting. I watched our last week's thing, and I noticed I blink like a lot. And I'm like, why am I blinking so much? So I apologize.
Because you're staring at a screen.
I think it's me not wanting to squint, but I can't see. So I'm blinking a lot. And if I'm going like this a lot, I don't know why, and I'm sorry.
Let's see. I've got it looks like a reasonable question here. I'm just trying to scan. Tommy Quirk, I have a question. Hey kids, greetings from Chicago. You guys have a few moments on stage when Jen and Travis walk or run, depending on the size of the stage, to jam next to each other. My question is this: how many has Jen brained, quote, brained Travis with the headstock? Okay.
The guitar, yeah.
How many times has Jen brained Travis with the headstock of her bass on stage? It's funny how when we do stuff like that, and I think I'm not sure what the numbers are, but I'm guessing Jen's been hit more than I have. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right?
I would say I probably hit you under 5 times in the course of our history together.
In our whole
I
career.
often walk away with black and blue bruises from all those sorts of shenanigans on stage. But it depends. Sorry, go ahead, Travis.
No, you go ahead.
It depends on. I've noticed there's been times when we're on not our normal sides of the stage because say we're playing with somebody and I'm on the other side. When you're not used to that as much, he gets clocked a little more, or I get clocked a little more actually. But I think we're getting better at not nailing each other. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we've gotten really good at that. So I do want to mention something that you guys were supposed to remind me of. Everybody should share this if they want to.
Yes.
Tom just reminded me. So we're sharing it on our pages, but if you guys want to help kind of spread the love, and if you feel like the friends on your page would be interested in anything that we're doing, we keep kind of growing this community and hanging out on Saturdays, and then hopefully we grow that to some of the music performances, and then as we start our special guests, we start growing it to some of their stuff. So feel free to share this feed. The other thing I want to mention is I don't know. I haven't figured out whether we're seeing comments from the shared pages or the Travis Larson Band page only, the stuff that we're monitoring personally here. So if you want us to respond to a question or a comment, then probably want to go to the Travis Larson Band page, just because I know we see those feeds right here directly.
I have a question from Bob and Tita. Hi, Bob and Tita.
Bob and Tita.
They say, how's the bourbon supply? Don't say, fine. Thank you.
You're gonna have to ask somebody else. I'm the milk drinking rock guy.
They are always so sweet to provide backstage adult beverages at the X Jam or at a lot of places when things are getting a little hectic, and sometimes you need a little go juice.
Right.
So
right.
Thank you, Bob and Tina. Thanks for tuning in.
Cheers.
And Julie, hi Julie. She says you should be seeing comments from all shared pages based on what I saw on our chat.
Okay.
So, okay, good.
Oh, good.
Thank you, Julie.
That's fine.
I just want to make sure I don't miss anything, because I remember the first one I thought I missed some based on the fact that I was just looking at this one feed. Sorry, I've been scrolling back through. I saw a good "Who's the Man" earlier, and then it went by.
Yeah, I see it. I know it. Maybe. Okay, Who's the Man? From Cheryl.
Yeah?
Cyndi Lauper versus Pat Benatar.
That was the one I was looking for. Boy, that's a tough one, because very different genres. Let me say this. When they were both at the height of their careers, I would have said Pat Benatar all day. But as Cyndi Lauper has matured over time, she is awesome. Like I saw Pat Benatar last year or the year before on that reunion, like the anniversary tour. Was it 35th anniversary or something like that? Anyway, and they were slamming. They were, it was a great rock show, and I loved the production and what they were doing with a small band, kind of like a lot of stuff we do, where they were making a small band have the production of their records with, all kinds of stuff that is it Neil Giraldo? Is that her husband's name?
I believe so.
He was doing a lot of stuff on stage that people don't realize he was doing that I could tell was going on.
Yep.
And he sat down, he played piano and then guitar. So I thought that was a pretty amazing show. But I've seen Cyndi Lauper hold huge amounts of people in the palm of her hand singing a cappella. Like if I could hold people like that, it's just an amazing thing. So I don't know. I don't have an answer.
Jen?
Go ahead. No, I was gonna comment on something else. Go ahead.
I would say I agree. They're both amazing. I mean, both just absolutely legit singers. And Cyndi Lauper slightly got pigeonholed into sort of a corny 80s pop, but it wasn't her doing, that's just where her career went. Pat Benatar sort of benefits from having the cooler career throughout, and she was a badass. So, and I think it was just, I mean, I would watch those, Promises in the Dark video of Myron Grombacher with the big rack before racks were a thing. He welded that thing together or something. And if he jump around like he was going to pee his pants the whole time, that was awesome. So
if you had to throw, say, Joan Jett into that circle, would there be a comparison there?
End of comparisons.
I figured. I was thinking earlier today about Joan Jett, Who's the Man, Joan Jett, and I couldn't come up with one, so I didn't. Yeah,
she's one of those incomparables in terms of just being an unstoppable force. Like even if in that triplet in that triad, I would I would almost still say Pat Benatar has the pipes, right, with the opera thing and all that. But yeah, you just there's no comparing to Joan Jett. I think.
Well, here's the thing about Joan Jett.
Yeah,
Joan Jett has lost nothing.
Good point.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right.
You see Joan Jett, and Jen and I have met Joan Jett. We've seen her up close and personal, and she has lost nothing. She is a machine, man. And the thing is, I know what you're saying about vocals and stuff, and I realize she's got a style that, it's like she's kind of born with a thing that she can continue to do. Kind of, it's like the Sammy Hagar discussion, right?
Right.
Where it's like he just seems to be able to keep doing that and doing it. Whereas some people, they lose their range and things start to change over time. But yeah, Joan Jett, just to even, like you said, work ethic and just being an all around total badass to the bone. Doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah, totally.
Isn't that one of her two? Badass to the bone.
Right. Yeah. Stephanie says Joan Jett.
Yep.
Oh yeah. Well, like I said, that's why I couldn't come up with that's a good word, Dale. She's an incomparable. And there's a lot of those. There's been some where I'm like, I'll come up with a person. I'm like, I don't know who to put in the mix with them. So
Larry Dickey says, who's the man, Joan Jett or Lita Ford? Joan Jett.
Joan Jett.
Joan Jett.
I've met
Come on, Larry.
We played with Lita Ford. She's great, but Joan Jett.
Joan Jett.
Sorry.
Yep.
So, all right.
Let's see who else is out there.
So Eric, hey Eric Davis, how's it going?
Marilyn says, "I hope Ronnie Lee sees this." Ronnie Lee is a really sweet, awesome lady who rocks. Who wrote some of the Runaways hits, and we've played with her several times. I sat in with her and Larry Mitchell at the NAMM show this last year.
Just going to say that.
And she's really awesome.
Love you too, Harris.
Sorry, I'm just checking comments to see what's going on out there.
We
Harris,
had a question. Oh, go ahead, Dale. Go.
really quick. Harris said, "Love you guys," and I wanted to say I'm still enjoying that hot sauce you gave us last time we were in Mexicali. It's awesome. It's one of these things where I use it sparingly because I dig it, and it's not something you just dump on food. It's just something to enjoy and preserve. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
Mary says sorry she missed the show. So I did a live feed show for those of you joining us. I did a live stream music show where I actually played right here on Wednesday night at 7. I'm going to do another one in a couple of weeks. I'm trying to figure out the exact time, but I just want to, if you're coming to this and you've missed stuff like that, make sure you like the Travis Larson Band page and follow it, because then you get those notifications is the word I'm looking for. And also keep an eye out. We put events up for those where we invite as many people as we can, but Facebook usually shuts us down at a certain number. So just kind of keep an eye out for that stuff. Oh, Jen, congrats on the magazine spread. You rock. We should plug that article.
Oh.
So yeah, Jen came out.
I forgot all about it.
She just came out with a great big spread that's all over all our Facebook pages right now, and it's on the Twitter, and it's on the all the wwws, whatever you do. The kids come here and they see the stuff, and Guitar Girl magazine did a really nice long, pretty in-depth interview with her about stuff. So that was really nice. It was pre-corona lockdown, I will mention. So she was talking about, at that point, she was thinking, touring plans and stuff down the road and all that. But they got really into, a good history of the band and, our history, and just generally speaking about how badass Jen is and how she deserves more props, and not enough people know about how amazing she is, and on and on and on. And, it's getting fairly close. We got a couple more minutes, but our special guest had a little bit of involvement with that, knowing how badass you are.
Yeah, I will say that, yes, our special guest, who will be joining us shortly, did an interview with Allison Richter, is the writer who did the interview, and she was just amazing. I had so much fun. It was a phone interview, which I do not do well at those things, much like these things. I'm kind of idiot like that. So, but we ended up chatting for hours and hours, and I was like, oh my gosh, this poor woman has to edit all of this. Yeah, and then but I may, just all this bullshit basically we were just chatting about life and stuff. And so she did an amazing job of weeding through and trying to find actual coherent thoughts from me. And anyway, yes, she did an interview with our upcoming special guest, and this person, hooked us up, and it was a really great experience. And so thank you, Allison. Thank you, Guitar Girl Magazine. And it was fun.
Wayne says, what's our secret to staying together for so long? We've covered some of this on
deodorant,
but deodorant, yes. It's funny because our special guest, who's coming up in a few minutes, is probably the one person that's toured with us maybe more than anybody else. Maybe, like in our career, as far as how much time we've actually done with this person on the road.
How much time we've done
in bands. One of the few people we know that's willing to go out and work at a ridiculously wingnut level like we do, and stays out there, but until I actually see them pop up, let me take one more question here. Jennifer, just curious, have you ever played Fender Precision basses? If so, what do you think? Love the tone of them.
I have not specifically spent a good amount of time with the Fender Precision bass. As soon as I discovered the Music Man Sterling, I kind of fell in love and, never wanted to play around with anything else. So
I will say Leo Fender had a lot to do with Music Man in the early days.
That's true. Yes. So I so appreciate all the players, and that's all I ever hear about is those. And perhaps as I move along here in just my exploration of instruments themselves, I will dig in,
Right.
to more varied instruments. I recently got Geddy Lee's big old, I forget the title, big old badass book of bass. There's like a lot of words in that title, and it's amazing to look at all of the instruments. And I someday will hopefully get a chance to appreciate more of the big badass basses out there.
Right. The big badass basses. But nothing's better than music, man.
Tommy Quirk
I
says,
meant just as like, a hobby, just tinkering around.
Yeah, no, I know. Bill from Houston says hi.
Tommy Quirk says, Joan Jett, my second concert with Cheap Trick in 82. Holy crap.
So our special guest has arrived. I'm going to bring him in. This gentleman, an amazing bass player and all around just supportive of us for a long time. Please welcome Bryan Beller.
With Cheap Trick in 80.
Bryan Beller.
Hi. Hey, Bryan.
I'm going to bring him in. This gentleman, an amazing.
Hang on a second.
Our special guest. Yeah, you can hear the 20-second delay.
Yeah, so I just hi everybody. Technical.
Hi.
I just realized I had the Facebook thing open, and then I went into the broadcast studio, and I realized that both those things were happening at the same time. So I left the Facebook thing, and now I'm just here with you guys. That's the right way, right?
Yep.
That's the right way.
Yep.
And so if you look on the right side of your screen, you see a comments thing, so you can kind of scroll through comments as well.
Oh, there it is. Okay, cool. Yeah, that was wondering how I was going to do that. All right, awesome.
So
Hi.
I'm super professional. I gave you like a big, nice credit here for a minute, so everybody knows who it is.
Oh, look at that. Neato.
Who's that guy?
So I don't know if you heard, but we were talking a little bit about you, and we said you're probably the one guy that we've toured with maybe more than anyone else in our career as far as actual man hours on the road together.
Well, and you have my sympathies.
Exactly.
I will say, unafraid to bust ass also.
We've been through so much together. I mean, like, I can't remember what the first tour we did together was.
The very first one. So you guys did the first Aristocrats show in San Francisco, and Jen and I went to that. That was at the Biscuits and Blues, or wasn't the first Aristocrats show, but it was kind of the first one where let's go out and try and travel and see if we can do this.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was, then you did a short run around the West Coast around a NAMM show, and we were on that. And that was the first kind of 5 or 6 gigs or whatever it was. And then a year later, or whenever it was, we did the Western states. And then in 2015 we did North America.
We did the whole summer, right? And then we did them together.
So we've done 4 with you guys, which we've done all 4, but the second one we didn't do the whole tour. You guys did the East Coast without us because at that point I think you were still feeling it out and you were maybe doing fly dates. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I was trying to remember if we had done anything with Mike Keneally, an actual tour. We did,
We've
right?
done that too. Yes.
And when was that?
We did. Did we do Mike Keneally? We did Mike Keneally. Was that after the first Aristocrats dates, Jen? Do you remember?
I think so. Yeah. Shortly thereafter.
We did that shortly thereafter, and then like not too long ago, like maybe 2 years ago, we did another run together, and then Mike was on here like a week and a half ago, and we were so disappointed because we were actually going to do something this year together, which we would have been trying to figure out how to schedule you and everybody and Joe, but it'll happen,
Yeah. Instead, we're here. Instead, we're doing this. Cooler.
Right.
I mean, why do that when we could have been doing this all along? I mean, we obviously been doing this all wrong.
This is so much more like Star Trek. It's, for people who grew up when we couldn't do this, who knew that someday we'd be all sitting in front of big screens able to communicate with each other.
We were promised jetpacks.
I know. When are the jetpacks coming?
Where are the jetpacks?
And the teleportation.
Yeah.
I want the teleportation thing.
Brian Schiller says bass players are taking over the stream.
Noted.
Two of my favorite bass players, Danny Peoples. I'm just looking at a few comments here.
Yep.
If you got any questions for Bryan Beller while he's here, please throw them at us. Nick says he saw us at the Gramercy Theater. That was a great night. That was a sold-out show.
Hi, April. She's sweet.
I remember the Gramercy was the night that. So I would go to the dollar store and I was collecting these dollar store raincoats, and they were so small and cheap I could fit them in my guitar case. And the Gramercy was the first night I got to wear one of my dollar store raincoats, which looked like a body condom.
Yep. You just were setting the whole thing up just so you could say body condom.
Yes, he was.
That was the hit right there.
It's Jen posted a nice picture of that on my birthday. But so Bryan, we've been talking a little bit about. I know you're a guy, and I am too. We kind of all are. Where we're from an age where you always had the blog, and that was kind of ahead of its time and cool. But we're from an age where you didn't necessarily perform. Yet we're not YouTube fans. We weren't fans of people bootlegging shows and that kind of stuff. And then, so the world turns upside down, and now all of a sudden everybody is streaming live shows from their living room. And I know you're not that guy, and I wasn't really that guy. I did my first one on Wednesday, but it's an interesting, weird change now of all that stuff going on, right?
And you could just almost see the dividing line of, I think, and it is generational. Whereas millennials, everybody talks about millennials being, the young millennials. Yeah, millennials are 30 now. They're in their 30s. It's not like, So there's a lot of millennials out there, and you can see that they're posting videos on Instagram all the time, Facebook and Instagram videos. This was how they built their world. And so they're used to it. Most of them have I'm not saying that no one my age has that kind of inclination and to post videos a lot and has a video set up ready to go and all the rest of that stuff. But I'm even older than I am. I'm 48, but I kind of act like I'm 58 because I believe in the power of albums. I believe in that, you should set something up and that in the music that you release it's a process for us, but it's an event for the people who are following you.
Right.
That's not the way that it really goes these days. The whole thing is a process. So people are constantly posting content, constantly posting videos, and it's just always bang, 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 bang. That's super cool if you do that. I think it's important for people to kind of stay consistent to whatever it is they feel comfortable with as an artist and as a brand. And ideally, those two things are walking hand in hand at all times. I've always felt more comfortable kind of writing as a blogger and in a literary sense in terms of my real-time output. That to me feels right to me. For the people who are kind of faced with this new world, like we all are, it's like, oh my God, look, the Rolling Stones did a live show. They're 77.
Right.
That's great. But only do it if it feels right to you. And this is my big message right now. And I'm trying to figure out where I am on it. And the answer is I don't really know. And I think whenever you're in that kind of position as an artist, and still kind of a little bit questioning what your artistic statement is at a time, the best thing to do is just to sit back and let it form, let it cook, just don't, you're the kind of person who's constantly putting output out all the time, no matter what. That's a thing. I'm not like that. I need time, and I haven't been putting out a lot of video content. The videos I put out are very deliberate and infrequent. And so if I go back to video, I've thought about doing a playthrough for 2 songs on Scenes from the Flood. Those would be the first playthroughs I've ever done on my own. I've done one playthrough in my entire life, and it's for the Aristocrats Living the Dream, and I did it for Gallion Kruger. And I'm just not used to it, and I've never really edited my own video ever. So it's time to learn.
It's such a cool.
What's that?
It's a cool point that you bring up right now, though, because I think a lot of artists feel so much pressure to output. And I saw your post about maybe it's time to input right now, especially if that's how you roll, and I totally I concur with you. I am way more in an input kind of mode, but there's this pressure and it's frustrating. And I know you just output. You spent a long time outputting with your record that you it's not time for you to output right now.
Well, and that's the thing is that we all need to find something to write about. And, for some people, they've been waiting and suddenly this happened and now it's their time. And they're like, I got it. I know what I want to say. And that's cool. Some people wrote something and we're going to release it right now. Those are the people I really feel for. That's just what can you do with that? You know, like Joe Satriani's new album came out on April 10 or something, like right in the heart of this thing. And Sony Epic was behind him all the way, and they put it out, and it charted at number 8 on the Billboard charts, and that's all great. But like, you're screaming into this very, very strange universe right now. And then there's people like me who worked for a long time on a release like Scenes from the Flood. I worked on it for years and years and put it out last year. So I'm not sure really and the Aristocrats album came out last year, also the most recent one. You know what? So I just toured that and promoted this, and I'm like, you know, I need to take a step back anyway. And that's totally fine. As artists, you can't just be in a constant output mode, or I think you're kind of missing a key part of the plot of what it means to be an artist. You know, we're here to kind of process the world and maybe show it to people in a slightly different reflection, in a way that maybe they'll see it in a different reflection, and then they have their own experience with it. So, there's that whole thing. But, you know,
interesting insight into Scenes from the Flood. One of the track I believe Joe Satriani played on was woodshedded and worked out on that bench right there behind me.
That's a stool, not a bench.
Or stool, yeah, sorry. We've been working. I'm
just saying.
Jen got a new bench. I had benches on my mind. So Jennifer was playing those drums, and Bryan was sitting on that stool playing his bass. And what song was that, Bryan?
So this was, when was this? Like 2016, 17? It was a while ago, but I'd had this melody in my head ever since 2013. It was the very first thing to show up for the album that was dedicated for the album. And it showed up in late 2013, and this melody and this counterpoint was bouncing around this kind of this chord change and this motif had been in my head for all these years. And I'd been on tour nonstop with the Aristocrats and Joe Satriani. And finally, in 2017, early in the year, I was like, this is it. I'm stopping for a year and I'm going to demo this album. And somehow I ended up in San Luis Obispo and Travis Larson, Jennifer Young Central. And Jen and I were in that studio where Travis is. And I said, Jen, can you just play these changes? And it was just C to D and C to D, and I played this on another bass, and it was the very first time I ever heard the beginning of what Volunteer State would become. So that's true. It happened right there. It happened right there. I forgot about that.
It's still in her looper, I believe.
Is that true?
I think. Yeah. I don't know. You know, I went looking for it a while ago, but I have a couple loopers, so I might not have the one that it was in. So I got to poke around a little more.
I think it's a high number. I think we always put the questionable stuff in a high number because all the like show stuff is like 1 to 30 or whatever.
I do the same thing. Anything I'm demoing, I would put it all up in the 50s.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So when you're writing, Bryan, I find it pretty interesting that I know you had much of this in your head. Do you write from your brain and then apply it to instruments, or do you ever write from the bass and apply it? Because that's a big question we've gotten in the last few weeks of how we compose and all that sort of stuff.
On Scenes from the Flood, it would show up in my head kind of arrangement complete, which is really weird. But like for Volunteer State, I knew that those were guitars that were doing that stuff. And I knew what the groove was. I knew what the bass was. For most of the album, that's the way it was. I would hear a motif and it's like, well, that's obviously a guitar. That's obviously a keyboard. Here's the drum groove. You know, it wasn't like stuff was just happening on the instrument. It was showing up whole, which is really, really hard to describe. There's a song called As Advertised, which is like two different really, really kind of droning melodies. And I remember thinking to myself, my God, you know, these things will not leave my head. And then I realized, wait a minute, it's the same song. They happen at the same time. And I had a bass line underneath it and a drum underneath it. And I don't know how to describe the writing process for Scenes from the Flood other than it had been 10 years since I'd written an album and I had a lot to say. And I would go on hikes in the backyard where I live and it would just come to me. And I would sing it into a voice memo. And there was a certain point at which I could sing almost the entire album to myself straight through, 88 minutes. And I knew what it was, but I just had to get it out in the demo form. But, you know, aside from the actual instrumentation of it, the weirdest thing to me right now about Scenes from the Flood is that the whole conceit of the album is that we all have our plans, ambitions, and dreams for life, and then a storm comes of some kind, some event, which like we all encounter it one or twice or maybe 3 times in our life, where everything changes and like nothing is going to be the same after this, and you don't get to keep everything. Some stuff you're just going to have to let go, and you come out of it, you know, you're still you, but you're pretty fundamentally transformed. And how human nature reacts in the middle of those things, and it's not always pretty. And there's some disillusionment that comes along with that sort of thing.
Right.
And now here we are 8 months later, and like the whole world is going through this. I'm not sitting here saying that my album was a prophecy. It's just weird to look back on it and think that this is what the album was about on a personal level, but we're kind of experiencing it on a society level right now. Like, what are we going to keep and what are we going to let go after this whole thing is over?
Yeah. Interesting
this
thing.
Whole thing's your fault, Bryan.
Right.
This whole thing.
I'm just commenting from the peanut gallery. That's my job.
Prophesize from Scenes from the Flood. Oh boy.
Yeah.
One of the things that comes up a lot is that we, definitely the 4 of us, but people in our world tend to do exactly what we're doing right now anyway, if we're not out playing live music. So 90% of the time, you know, well, not in your world in the last few years, but maybe let's say 30% of the time when you're home, you're actually kind of keeping to yourself and working on stuff on your own and living rurally as we all do. And so it's interesting to watch the whole world kind of come into that same mindset and adjust to it. And it's interesting, some of the comments you get where people say, well, you don't have to deal with this. You don't have to deal with that. People that have been living the other life for a long time, you know, and we're kind of sitting here going, I feel something and I know there's something going on out there, but because I'm not touring, it doesn't affect me a whole lot yet, you know?
You know, this is like, you know, the whole introvert's paradise, right? It's like, welcome to our world.
Yes.
And people may, I mean, and I don't know, Travis, you guys and Dale and Jen, you can all speak for yourself in this, but you know, we're all on stage, especially those of us who are kind of like I don't want to say band leader, but on the microphone a lot, you know, when we were really kind of projecting publicly a lot on stage. That does not necessarily mean that we're like that, like when we're home, you know, I mean, some people are kind of larger than life personalities and they're always outgoing and that's a thing. But like when I get home, I am super, super quiet and I need a lot of time to recover. I'm really depleted after touring and, you know, it feels great to be there in the energy of the crowd and give it all out. But the traveling really gets to me. The consistency of the urban centers really gets to me. And that's why I live in an extremely rural area so that I can recover and have this space to get my brain and my heart and my soul back, you know,
right.
And that's the balance. Now, is it like that for you guys?
Absolutely. Well, I remember when you moved to where you are now, and I you know, we live in a not the same area, but a similarly rural area. And I remember you looking at me going, why would anybody live anywhere else? Like, why?
Yeah. Isn't it a weird thing that like, I mean, and some people love the energy of cities and they love being around people. They're like, oh my God, I could never like live in an area where I couldn't just walk around the corner and like go to my favorite restaurant or a bar or hang out with other people and everything. I just find it fascinating. It's like, here I am. It's a town of maybe about 3,000 people. I look over that mountain over there. There's 20 million people over there. Mm-hmm. Southern California, the whole basin is right over there.
Right.
And here, there isn't anybody. Why? Why do humans congregate that way? Not just because they all have to be near water, like, you know, like the Tigris and the Euphrates. Right. It's not like that anymore. So why do people do that? I mean, and when you're touring, of course, you know, you have to go to the places where the most people are. You can't just go to the, you know, middle of nowhere, I mean, unless it's Coachella. But
right.
You got to go to where people are. And so it's urban center after urban center after urban center. Lots of energy, lots of energy, lots of energy. For some people, that's a rush and it's a kick and they want it and they need it and they feed off it. God bless those people. Yeah. I didn't realize when I signed up for a life of being a touring musician that like that was going to be a thing for me to manage. Jen and Dale, what about you?
I totally relate to what you're saying. Even not being a person on the microphone, people assume that if you're on stage and you're putting all this energy out that you must be an extrovert, and it's just what we do. And actually being on stage almost tries to interfere with it, because it's normally you're honing your craft is such kind of it's a solitary thing, or it's a real intimate thing between you and the other musicians. And then when you're in this real high energy public space, I have to come down off that too. And one of the most rewarding things about being on tour is you one-on-one, you say hi to people you know and love, you recognize them over time. But even that stuff I would shy away from. Even people I like and love, I have to recover from engaging, socially. And that's not to make it sound like I don't like doing it, but I have to refuel after that.
Yeah, and I'm finding, I don't know about you guys, and I want to hear from you, Jen, in a second, but that like now that I'm home and like I have an extended break off the road, I have recovered completely. I'm not depleted anymore, and now I'm like reaching out to friends and I'm talking to them more often, than I would if I was touring and I needed to be on tour and then alone after we get tour, and after we come back from tour, I need to be alone for a little while. So I'm like making all these connections with friends like I'm a normal person.
Right.
Even though I'm not. Jen, what about you?
Reminds me, I had well, everybody knows my deal. I had a question. Have you been in touch with Joe Travers, and how is he doing?
Joe Travers is funny.
About being in touch with people.
Hi, Joe.
Joe Travers is really funny because, as everybody knows, Joe Travers is #no social media.
Right. That's why I was wondering how he's doing.
So, and also, I connected with most of my close friends already via Skype somehow, like we all are doing. It's the video conference sensation that's sweeping the nation. Suddenly everybody's doing it, right? And so I'm on with my family and my brother and sister and, Rick Peters and Rick Basalam and Mike Keneally and my other friends and everybody. And then I texted Joe. I'm like, hey, Joe, you want to Skype? He just texted me back. He's like, oh, I'm doing good. Glad to hear you're doing well. It's not because Joe is like not a nice guy. It's just he's just the whole technology thing.
He's
just
the
really
introverted.
He's
the most introverted of
on
all.
the whole Zappa thing, on making his releases, listening to music. He has his things that he likes to do. He has his things that he doesn't like to do, and he cannot be moved.
Right. See, I think I put myself in that category a little bit. That's why I wanted to see how he was doing. And
yeah,
I'm not maybe as Joey as Joe is, but I lean towards those ways.
Well, I just talked to Mike Mesker, who is the artwork guy for the Zappas, and Steve.
We know Mike well, yeah.
Yeah, and he connects with Joe Travers regularly, and I just heard he said that he talked to Joe recently, and Joe's doing good. And he was super psyched because he just found something new in the Zappa vault. So he's super happy.
Oh, good.
I'm overdue to give him a call. So we'll figure that out. Hey, let's look at the comments for a little bit. I see some people here that I know.
Yeah, Bryan, absolutely. I saw Katie King.
I saw Kate King. Hi, Kate King. Kate King does these really cool designs on acoustic guitars. There's like artworks on those. And she's up in Canada in Vancouver. Oh, hi, Cindy. Cynthia Tim, typical introvert. I've known Cindy for longer than almost anybody in Los Angeles. I met her the week that I got here. That was 1993.
Wow.
Yeah, and she's awesome. She has 3 kids. She's in Sunland, Tahunga. She's great. Joe Travers is the sweetest, says Cindy.
Yeah.
Somebody commented Kipster.
Oh, is Kip here?
Yeah. He said,
I'm not looking.
Yeah, Kip's in.
Okay, I wasn't looking at the live feed, so I didn't see like who's joined, but I'm just looking at comments. But yeah, Kip actually has gotten. Kip is the worst of all of us, Bryan, and he's actually gotten on Facebook to join these things the last 2 weeks.
Oh, there's at the top of my backyard mountain, someone, and I don't like, of course, no one should tag things, but someone very long time ago, looks like it was 25 years ago, spray painted Kip was here.
Huh, nice.
What?
No, seriously.
Kip, Stork, what were you doing there?
Right.
Jim Conrad says, wow, I thought Jen had grown a mustache and a goatee for a minute there.
Nice.
Not nice.
I know, me and Bryan are very often confused.
Who is that insulting to? That's the question, right?
Very much, Jen. Frank Bernard, Bryan, are you working on a follow-up to your solo album or new Aristocrats album? No. I'm not. I'm like, Scenes from the Flood just took everything I had, and the Aristocrats album happened really fast. I'm happy to let those speak for me for a little while, and we'll see what happens next. Hi, Julie Cord. Everybody loves Julie Cord.
Yeah, Julie Cord.
Hey, Julie.
Yeah. Thank you, Ted Code. That's a very, very nice comment. And who else is down here? Let's see here.
Kip says hello, Mr. Beller.
I confess. Stephanie Hilstein, I confess. To what?
Let's see.
Probably tagging the mountain down.
Oh, yeah,
right. Okay.
Right.
She's a Kip fan.
What is me, yo?
Kip actually typed something?
Yes, he says.
We can talk about Kip because, why not?
So last night, for those that don't know, Kip is our, he's been TLB's engineer since the mid-90s. We built Avalon Recording Studio with him from 96 to 98. Have done or parts of all our records there over the years. Dale lives there.
If I'm practicing, I'm at Kip's place.
He just stays in a box. He never comes out. But Kip was also the touring engineer for the 2 North American Aristocrats tours with us and the Aristocrats. And
the European tour for them.
And the European tour, that's correct.
Kip says, stop now, yikes.
The preview.
I didn't say you were good, Kip. I just said you did that stuff.
Hey, I have to give one more shout out to Cindy. I'm realizing now this piece of artwork that's behind me. She gave me this, I think, 22 years ago.
Oh wow!
Oh wow!
Wow, yeah, do that for a second.
Nice.
The David Hockney piece. The David Hockney piece about that's like a photo collage of the.
Oh, I've seen that. Yeah, I've seen that at your house. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's great. So, I mean, we could ask rhythm section questions, or we could talk more about making records. But I know I'm kind of fascinated by the record making process with Bryan, because we make records, Bryan makes records, and everybody kind of does it in their different way. And we had a discussion last week with a lot of the questions asking how we put stuff together. And, basically when the seeds of something start, like, where do you start? Do you start with, do you ever just jam to something like incoherently and come up with ideas there? Is it usually in your head? Is it all different ways? And then
it's focused. So first of all, I'm just going to, because Danny Peoples asked a really good question. Yes. I'm going to just distract for 1 second. Yeah. How do you get the wah tone you have? Really simple. Take the Dunlop bass wah and then put overdrive in front of it. Whatever your favorite overdrive is. Make sure that whenever you're going to get a bass wah tone that you drive it somehow, because if you don't put overdrive in front of bass wah, it ends up sounding like, doesn't sound like anything. But if you put like I have a Exotic Effects bass BB preamp, which is a good overdrive, and then I put a Digitech bass driver, which is good creamy distortion. Both of those things on before the bass wah, and that's like the sound that you would hear on like the bass solo of Sweaty Knockers or something like that. Yeah. So there you go. I write in a very focused way. Like when I have an idea, I actually think of a song title first.
Wow. And so you start with ideas, right?
What's that?
You start with ideas versus going in and saying, I'm going to sit down and write music now.
Yeah. I mean, there was a couple of things on Scenes from the Flood, only 2 songs that I didn't have it really fully formed. And I knew what the title was. And it was like, okay, I'm going to sit down and I know what the vibe is. And I need to come up with something that fits that vibe. And one of the songs I did that was Lookout Mountain, because it was an acoustic guitar piece. It was acoustic baritone guitar. And I knew I wanted it to be kind of in a really weird open tuning. And there's no way for me to approximate that in my head. So I tuned the guitar to an open B7. And then I started barring around and doing weird things. And of course the harmonics come out really weird when you do that. And then that part of the song showed up. So that was one of the rare times I did that. Same thing with the singing bowls and that. I set up the singing bowls and I just turned on my my iPhone voice memo and just improvised a little bit. And then something magic came out and I was like, oh God, that's it. Yeah. That's extremely rare for me. Usually I know what most of it is before I even sit down.
And for demoing, are you a guy that gets detailed with the drums and things, programming, stuff like that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ask Marco. Yeah, because I'm a frustrated drummer. And I can see in my head, like, what everything is. Like, if I could actually make my limbs do it, I could be an awesome drummer. I know patterns really well. I know there it is, Dale. Dale's ready. You know,
Tell me what to do.
if I'm writing a really, really difficult specific groove, and sometimes I don't even realize they're difficult until I listen back, and then I realize what it looks like, and I'm going, oh, like Texas Crazy Pants. That's a pain in the ass. That to have the main riff on that, and what I did was I programmed in the middle of that song the kick drums to do that. And what ends up happening is the left-right stuff gets very, very weird. And Marco actually had to take 15 seconds and figure it out, which he never does. But no, I'll write specific stuff for the Aristocrats, and I wrote specific stuff for Gene Hoglan for Scenes from the Flood, and for Joe Travers for Scenes from the Flood, and they know me pretty well. So generally, hopefully, I've written a drum part that's really playable because I got it from watching a drummer. But if I program something and I think it's specific and I see that it looks awkward, then I'll be like, hey, listen, dude, you know, if I program something that's dumb, don't do that.
Yeah.
You know, do come up with something that feels natural.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm a big drum programmer. I love programming drums, and I think that specific grooves, that's kind of like a Nine Inch Nails thing. The specificity of a drum groove, right down to where you put the hi-hat accents, can really change the whole song, especially if it's a droning, vibing, atmospheric thing.
Yep.
Ted asks TLB, after touring with the Aristocrats several times, what is your favorite of their songs?
Problem
Now,
with
here's the thing about instrumental music. We saw them live every night, but we never looked at the titles.
yeah, that's
I know what the titles are.
I'll tell you
My
my favorite.
sing it, Travis, sing it.
Well, my favorite songs, and this is the truth. I'm not saying this just because he's sitting here, but honestly, my favorite songs are Bryan's songs. And on the last tour, my favorite song was the second to last ballad that you guys would do.
Me too.
Because I can always feel those songs.
Order?
What was it?
Or was it Flatlands was the second to last song of the set?
So Flatlands, I think, is my favorite song. And there was another song that you guys did that was along those lines, another emotional song. Like you did a couple, but that's my favorite, Flatlands.
Thank you. Well, Last Orders was the other ballad in the set, and that's an absolutely beautiful ballad that Guthrie wrote with the world's hardest bass part. Oh my God.
Right.
Very, very, very difficult chordal bass part. I really didn't start playing that consistently, like up to A+ level, until the second half of the European tour, like shows 60 through 85 of out of 100. Like I finally hit my groove on that. Up until then, I was doing it, but I wasn't like really just absolutely nailing it.
Isn't that the most frustrating thing where you're like, how many times do I have to play this before I can nail it? It's ridiculous. So
yeah, well,
I'm glad you finally did.
You know, that song is one of those songs where there's only one way to do it. Every single finger placement has to be in the exact right spot. You cannot do alternate fingerings. If you don't do it that way, it won't work. And then even when you do it right, you know, you really have to make sure that your fingers are in the right spot. Oh, and Dan reminds me that I had to start Last Orders over in New York City. There were 2 times in the entire world tour cycle where I blew it to such an extent where I was just like, you know what, I'm doing it again. And of course, New York was one of them. You know, it was just oh God, shoot me. And
you know what? When you're playing this kind of music and it's so challenging every night, and people don't realize what we go through every day to make these shows happen.
Yeah,
especially on tours like that where it's a couple of vans and it's a skeleton crew. When you make a mistake like that and you stop, it actually adds personality to the show. I actually don't mind seeing things like that.
Yeah, it's just, you know, it's harrowing.
Yeah.
When it's in New York City, I was tired. It was just a long day. It was just one of those moments where I was just like, really? Now I have to remember on this touring cycle that the New York show, that's where that happened. Really, it's going to be like that. But there were a lot of other big cities where it went really well. And it was France where I finally just started really nailing it every night. You know, I discovered that the lighting had to be a certain way, and I had to lean over a little bit more. And I had to apply a little bit more left-hand pressure than I thought I did. And once those 3 things were right, I finally was like, that's it. And then it started happening. But this is the thing. I feel bad actually for musicians who don't get to tour their music, because you learn so much about your music and the performance of it and the way the songs feel. There's certain things that you only learn after show number 20.
Yeah.
You know, and if you don't tour, how are you ever going to, and it's not 20 songs over 3 years, not 20 shows over 3 years, 20 shows over a month. That's the deal.
Yeah.
So one of the things that comes up a lot, and especially with us being in sort of we kind of straddle the line, but sort of a fusion genre, is the jazz guys are kind of improvisational snobs, and then the rock guys like to learn the song. And we've always been the guys that like to learn the song. We leave a few windows open in a show where we can improv, but generally speaking, we want to have a good night every night. And we find that it's better to do that if you kind of go by the book. And so how do you feel about that? You were talking about the last song, and that's why that came to my mind, and how it was very specific. You can't change it. You got to do it that way.
Well, so here's my deal. You know, I'm in a band with, when I'm in a band with, when I'm doing the Mike Keneally gig, let's say take 3 different scenarios. I'm trying not to make this a 10-minute answer. Mike Keneally is constantly pushing his own songs in different directions at all times. So you're improvising while you're playing the lines. Of course, there's parts you have to hit, but you really got to be on your toes. It can go in any direction and anywhere. And it's part of a mental exercise. It kind of is like, it's a very Zappa-like ethos, even though some of his structures are pop. Then like for Joe Satriani, some of that stuff really just needs to be exactly what it is. You just got to execute so that Joe can deliver his performance, because Joe's solos are all composed in his things. I mean, he gives himself a little bit of leeway, but you know, that's part of the song. Right. Some of those famous solos. So you don't want to be just fucking around just to get your rocks off as a bass player, you know, doing fills on like, you know, Flying in a Blue Dream, you know, because it's like, oh, I'm bored. I don't want to go do it. Yeah, it's garbage, you know. Play the line, play the song. And there are parts of the show where you can stretch out. And then you should, you know, then it gets to be like a rock bluesy kind of jam, which is kind of my favorite way to open up. So I'm a little bit of an earthier player than a lot of the guys maybe that you would associate with the genre anyway. And then there's the Aristocrats. Now, I'm in a band with maybe the best improvisational guitarist in the world. You know, it's very, very intimidating in a way and imposing. But I know that my favorite places to open up are in the improvisational sections when it's designed like that. Like in a song like Get It Like That, it's a very, very basic open D thing where we have the opportunity to just play in 4/4 and just interact with each other. It doesn't have to be, you know, technical insanity. I mean, sure, we'll play fast stuff, but it's just more about a group interaction at that point. And there are little things inside the forms of the songs where I create moments where I can play different fills and inside the form. But when it comes time for me to do a bass solo in that world, in Aristocrats world, I do play composed solos, because a lot of the times it's odd time signature. It's something that I didn't write. It's a tempo that's a little faster than maybe I'm used to. And I just want to make sure that the show works.
Right.
So, you know, I'm not a jazz fusion player at heart. I'm a rock player. And so I'm really trying to just deliver something I know is going to be great. Guthrie has spent his whole life improvising. And so when he gets up there, you know, that's his thing, you know, and Marco goes both ways. There's some parts of the show where he knows that he wants to play, you know, certain fills in certain spots. There's going to be a really impressive thing here. There's going to be a transitional fill here. And then there's other places where he knows that he can just kind of go off. So he'll swing back and forth. And so will I during form things, but not during solos. During solos, I stick to the script.
Marco goes out on a limb like no one I've seen. I mean, I know Dale was commenting on that on the tour, where every night, because you watch somebody every night and you get to see the framework, but with him, I'm not sure where it is.
Well, if you play with anybody long enough, you do see you get to see the structure behind the building. You know what I mean? Sure. And of course, it took me a long time with Marco because his technical facility is limitless, but everybody has their thing, you know? Yeah. So I know as long as the monitoring is good and I can hear his whole kit right down to the first hi-hat and the first snare ghost note of a very difficult fill that he'll do. If I have that, then I can follow them. If the monitor
And
mix isn't
back
good,
to Kip.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes. But if the monitor mix isn't good and he starts some crazy 16th or triplet displacement fill, and I didn't hear the beginning of it, that can get lame and weird for me, because then I'm like, well, what just happened? I don't know where I am. Of course, you play with someone for long enough, you know to give each other the look in case something goes weird, because it happens to everybody. If your monitoring isn't good, something will happen and you can hear that we're a little bit off, and we're only 3 people and we've done hundreds of shows. We can look at each other really fast and we know how to get back on track very quickly.
Right. That's the beauty of us being in a band for 30 years too.
Yeah, exactly. So that's
I keep hearing Jen's clap because she tried to kill a mosquito.
Yeah, right?
Yep.
Is that what you're doing?
No, I was just...
Jennifer, you have a question.
Jennifer, what's the hardest song for you to play in this set?
Yes, that's the question.
What's the question?
What's the hardest song for you to play in your set?
Oh.
Greg asked that too on the comments. He said, what's the most challenging live song for you to perform?
That's a tough one because it's based on similar kinds of things. Like there's stuff like Bryan was talking about where you have to be in this exact right position to get it right, and double tap is a lot like that for me. This tapping song where it's not as specific as Bryan's, but it's close, where I have to stand really still so that I can hit and the notes all come out. But then there's other ones where I feel like the feel is so important, and sometimes in hectic mindsets, that's actually really hard to nail the groove appropriately, So, I don't know. In our last tour with the Aristocrats, we didn't play anything on the set that was so out of control that I couldn't swing stuff. Like, say, what's that one tune we yanked from the set? Because I was like, I don't want to do that one.
We did actually yank double tap because we couldn't. Gear was so tight, we didn't take the keyboard.
True. That's
right.
Right.
And then,
so autopilot would be one.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
What's that?
Go ahead.
I was gonna say autopilot is one that if it's placed incorrectly in the set, like if it's too soon and I'm not warmed up, it's impossible. But later on, I can tend to do it. So that wasn't in the set either. So yeah. I don't know. Our set was actually pretty mellow this time around, I think. Yeah.
I love listening to Jen do the Georgia thing. That was always a highlight of the set for me. You sound great on that. And and my favorite TLB song probably is, I think it's the song Annika. Is that the one that starts with bow down?
Yes.
Down?
It sounds like the moving picture, or I'm sorry, the
Camera Eye.
Sounds like Power Windows kind of vibe in the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I dig that song a lot. I just like the way it sets up. It's the sounds. I'm such a sound snob. The sounds of that song work so cohesively with the notes and the harmonic content and the melody and the rhythm. To me, that's what makes something really move.
Thank you. That came up the other night on one of these because it was actually that hasn't come out yet. I did a podcast interview with someone that it'll come out probably in a week or so, but they said that they were talking about the production on that song and asking if I specifically wanted to make it sound like kind of the high production era of Rush. And that was absolutely the idea with that intro. We literally, Jen and I were talking about, let's do something specifically like a Power Windows thing, because just you don't hear that anymore,
Yeah.
And then it was into a Dixie Dregs thing. The melody in that is full on. It's got fiddle harmony, and it sounds kind of like a Steve Morse melody. But
that's the TLB thing. That's the TLB thing is a marriage of those two kinds of things. And
right.
And by the time I always encourage people when they're writing songs, like, my God, I could go through every song on Scenes from the Flood and tell you exactly what influenced those songs. Maybe you'd be surprised. A couple people wouldn't be surprised, but by the time you make it yourself, unless you've absolutely just ripped it off, by the time it goes through your filter, it doesn't sound like that anymore anay. Right. It sounds like you, so don't run away from a specific influence.
Right.
Run to it and then make the song, And then, I think usually you'll be pretty pleased with where you ended up.
Well, one of the things that Eric Johnson always used to say is it's an amalgamation, obviously, of everything we've listened to, and just try and add more to the amalgamation, So if we can all sit there, and he's said many times, he can sit there and go, I know I sound exactly like Clapton here, and I sound like Hendrix here, and Wes Montgomery here, and but I didn't know any of those guys when I started listening to Eric Johnson. I mean, I knew Clapton, of course, and Hendrix, but then you start hearing the outside stuff that he was listening to, and we're all from somewhere. It's just a never-ending chain, right?
Someone just said there is no new music. It's the truth. It's all been done before. It's all been done before. So all you can do is just kind of take the stuff that moves you, that made you want to do music in the first place.
Here's a question for you, Bryan. Cameron says, what episode of Metalocalypse has Marco in it? Been trying to find it. Is Marco in an episode?
It's the, I think it's the Snakes and Barrels one where it's a 2-part episode where they're Alabama liquid snake or something. There's a drug that this one guy is trying to get the whole world to take or something. That's the conceit of the episode. And Mike Patton is the evil guy, and Marco is his lab assistant, and Mike Patton kills him.
That was nice.
And I know there's a Metalocalypse marathon going on now on Adult Swim.
Saw that, yeah.
Hi, Mark Storm. Hi, Mark Storm.
Hi, Mark Storm.
I neglected to say last 2 times ago when I was wearing my new headset mic that Mark hooked me up. You're the best. I used to have to teach drums like this. And at the end of the day, I couldn't move from here and my back was sore and I was a destroyed person. And now my life's better. Thank you, Mark.
Mark Storm has done
Electro Voice
things for the Aristocrats as well. Hooked us up with some great, awesome EV monitoring systems. We were able to carry our own monitor array, even though we were touring in a van. We didn't have a gear truck. We didn't have, we keep it pretty real with the Aristocrats. And all that stuff I was talking about monitoring on stage, Mark Storm and his awesome EV monitors really saved the day. So thank you, Mark. Thank you, Electro Voice.
Mark is seriously part of the TLB family world. Couple quick comments to Jen. Sam says Grace Wonder is amazing. That would be Jen's solo piece, which I don't think you did that on this tour, did you, or did you?
No, that was another one. I think we decided to pull kind of at the last minute,
just
based
to do
on time and gear and things. We did it on the first Aristocrats tour, though.
That's right. Well, the first
with the nerve-wracking mess every night, but okay.
Steve Harris says, Jen and Travis, how difficult is it keeping time during ADD when Dale is doing the drum solo?
Well, that's right, that thing.
Which that's I mean, the Aristocrats know all about that kind of stuff too, right? That's some of your whole songs are like that kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
I will say this on Jen and Trav's behalf, we're not a sound checking band. A lot of times we'll stand up there and Trav will go with the live chord and go, my shit works. And so then we'll get on stage. And then when it gets to that point, I should keep good, clean time, but I'm really experimenting too. And sometimes it'll get a little weird, but I can't hear them. So a lot of times the monitoring of Jen and Trav will go away from me. So I'm not staying in line as well as I should with their ostinato or with their vamp. So that makes it a lot harder for those guys. If I just start getting off, I'll know that it's off somehow and I can't hear the groove. And I'm just like, I'll give Trav there's 2 looks. One is the I'm wrapping up look, and the other's sorry, I'm lost. Figure it out. I can't hear you. Guys, I'm so sorry. It's so shameful when you're the drummer and you don't really know where one is, but you're just gonna. Anyway.
The trick behind that actually is I leave it to Travis to keep time, and as long as I can sort of hear Travis, I follow him. So I completely block Dale out. I rely on Travis to make sure he's in some kind of time. And that's why I go to Travis's side of the stage, because again, without sound checking, I very often don't have Travis in my monitor or whatever's happening. I go over to Travis' side of the stage and I can hear him. I hang on to him. He hangs on to Dale, and that's how it kind of.
Well, I have a pro-tier thing. You can hear me sonically on a bad stage. So you could never hang on to Jen based on just the sonics. It's just too much.
Or the playing.
I know. Rodney, right there. Rodney's here. He says, "Do any of you
Hi,
have
Rodney.
highly resolving home sound systems for personal enjoyment of music, or does perhaps your own musical efforts supplant the desire to listen intently?" So, do we like actually listening to music on a good system?
Yes.
Yes. I mean, well, I don't have like a consumer audio system hooked up, but I do have a pair of my KRKV6 monitors. I love listening to music on those. They're true response, but they're not like NS10 super dry response. You know, there's real bass in them, and they're fun to listen to, and you can hear a lot of details that you can't hear on consumer audio speakers. I have a really tricked out car stereo, like for my minivan. There's a power amp underneath each of the front seats. There's really, really good tweeters and mid-bass speakers in the front. So that's important to me. And for personal audio, I have a pair of Shure S846 SE, I think is the brand. It's the top of the line Shure earbud. And it's better than the Sennheiser IE800 for me because I can wear them while I work out, because you can use foams with those guys. They're really expensive, but the mid-range detail on them is crazy, and they were great for actually zeroing in on guitar frequencies. Like, I'm a real persnickety guy about like when mixing, about like when guitar is like a little too edgy at like 2.5K or 2K, that little thing. Some people like to leave a little bit of that hair in there. I really like to smooth that out, and I found that the SE846s, the Shures, were really, really good at finding that right on the edge where I wanted it and not where I didn't.
Gotcha. Here's a question that only you could answer, Brian, if you can answer it. Cameron says, "I bought one of Marco's snare heads signed by the guys. It says Balut Brothers."
Balut Brothers.
Go search Balut Egg.
We haven't even talked about the tour, this last tour, and how I was in the van with you guys the whole tour. And yes, Balut was quite a running joke for the whole tour. The
now there's just going to be a big like gigantic full screen word in red letters that just says redacted for the rest of this interview program.
Right.
We do a thing on here sometimes, Brian, called "Who's the Man," and people kind of know that, so they chime in sometimes. So "Who's the Man" would be like Mick or Keith, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Or you know what I mean?
Sure.
Sam or Dave.
I have a silly one.
Yeah.
Or do you have one from the comments?
I have one from the comments real quick. Dale Moon or Stuart Copeland. Now, are we talking influential or are we just talking drummer?
I'm just going to say Stuart Copeland. This is a no-brainer.
Sorry, Dale. I have to go with Stuart.
You would be foolish not to.
Okay, wait. I have one. This is a goofy one.
Okay.
Bugs Bunny versus Roadrunner.
Huh.
And
both Warner Brothers, though. I like that.
I'm with Brian.
Roadrunner. I like he's a man of few words.
Right?
Yeah.
Nice.
Roadrunner.
Let me see. I think I had another one earlier.
I would say
okay.
I was just going to say Bugs Bunny or Daffy Duck, but
I know, but see, I was trying to do the Bugs Bunny, but Daffy Duck is always like kind of a shithead, so I was trying to get the cooler of the two.
I'm with you.
Bugs Bunny was always so cool.
Yes,
Roadrunner was always so cool.
Good point. Yeah, you're
right. George Carlin versus Richard Pryor.
Oh God!
Ooh. Wow.
Ass.
Wow.
We'll just comment on it. I'm going to take a comment on Carlin just because, but yeah, those are two you can't compare.
That's a tough one.
That is. But I will say that when I was younger and I was just aware of George Carlin, I thought it was just slightly overhyped about how insightful and intelligent he was on the social commentary. And then I heard this interview where he talked about, curse words and he's famous for 7 dirty words. And I heard him break down that all the forbidden words in our language are all about they're either religious trivialities or they're body shame. And I remember just tripping out on that and going, I've never heard anybody say that. It's right. It's all body shame. It's like all the words we can't talk about. And then from then on out, I was like, yeah, this guy's an insightful person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, all comedians are insightful people. That's
Yes.
why we laugh. We
I
discover
agree.
a sudden shared truth. That's what laughter is in a way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yes.
Everybody's
Who's
saying Larson Band.
Claypool versus Flea?
Oh, that's a pretty good one.
Flea.
What was it again?
Flea. Les Claypool or Flea?
Les
Oh, Les
Claypool.
Flea.
I think I'm in the Flea camp.
Yeah, Flea. All the way.
I don't know. The bass players are fighting.
Yeah.
That's
I
a
don't know.
rough one, man. I don't know if I can.
That is a rough one, actually. That's a good one.
Yeah. I'll go with Flea. I'll try and keep it even.
I don't know. That's it. Kind of. I don't know. I'm a little torn on that one. I gotta say.
I got another couple
Come
Who's
on.
Mans, but I'm going to break it up with a quick
Wait.
question. And we're getting close here, Brian. Just so you know, so you're not like wondering when is this ever going to end.
Brian's like, when is
I'm
this
good.
torture
We
gonna
usually go
end?
to about 8:30, but somebody said, TLB, what's the biggest venue you ever played and how challenging was it? I will make the story very quick. And then we'll ask the band how challenging it was. And I don't know if Brian knows this story, so I can tell it without Jen telling me to shut up. I've told the story a million times. We opened for Ted Nugent in place of Leonard Skinner after their bass player died.
Oh God.
In front of 15,000 people. So the joke has always been, if you're in a bar and you yell "play Freebird," you can't scare us because we know exactly what that is. So he says, how difficult was it? Well, going into it, it was a little bit mind-numbing, but I will say that we ripped a little bit of an old Dregs medley at the end and played a little bit of Freebird as part of kind of an instrumental shreddy melody thing, and we got a standing ovation in the end. 15,000 people on their seats with their hands up because they knew they had missed those guys. And so by the end, we had gotten enough goodwill. I think the other goodwill was Jen playing Georgia because it was that crowd, right?
Yeah.
So how challenging was that for you guys?
I don't remember any of it, so.
Sound-wise, it was challenging.
I'm a blocker. I block things out. You know, a thing happens, I block it out, and then I'm like, oh yeah, it was great.
I remember that, and I was so nervous about rushing everything beyond recognition that when I heard it back, I was slightly dragging, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, "Are you serious?" I would have forgiven the rushing more than the dragging. And then, yeah.
So, is there anything that ever makes you nervous anymore, Brian? I mean, I know, obviously, I'm a musician asking you that, but
yeah, I I'm not one of those natural performers. I suffered greatly, especially early in my career, from stage fright and being nervous about difficult parts, especially because, I mean, the big joke about my whole career is that even though I always appreciated progressive music and all that, I never really trained to be Mr. Technical bass player. And somehow I ended up in the entire Zappa world and all these shredder guitarists and everything. Like, I wasn't built for this. And I wasn't even really, to a certain extent, I wasn't completely moved by that when I was a kid. My favorite progressive artists were not, I like Yes for the compositional complexity, but I shied away from Rush a bit, and I always leaned more towards Pink Floyd because it was such an atmospheric, melodic vibe, and I was always more about songs. And then groove, I was more of a James Jamerson, John Paul Jones guy than I was a Billy Sheehan or a Stu Hamm guy. So I thought that that's where I was going. And then next thing I know, I'm like doing sessions for Steve Vai, and I'm playing with Mike Keneally, and I'm in the Aristocrats. I mean, like, how'd that all happen? So, I constantly kind of have to really kind of push to perform at the level of the people that I'm playing with. And sometimes it's nerve-wracking.
right.
Like anything, the more you do it, the easier it gets. The first 5 or 10 shows of any world tour cycle for Aristocrats, Satriani, Vai, or anything are always like just, it's always just kind of a big holy shit.
Yeah.
Everything's coming out really fast. You don't really understand the pacing of the set. Sound isn't right, monitoring isn't right, and all these thoughts are going through my head. And then after a while, you work out all the kinks, and then suddenly you hit the groove, and then you can just start performing music. That's how it shows up for me anyway. So, yeah, I still go through that. I'm a normal person.
Sure. How do you walk into a community show?
No.
One thing that's
I
impressed
know
me
you
about,
better than that, Brian. You're not a normal person.
right?
Thanks, Ben.
The running joke here is that Bryan doesn't have any light on him.
Right.
What?
Because Bryan would never
Oh,
be on
that's
stage with
right.
any light on him because the light would distract him.
Yeah, I don't like having.
Oh,
You know,
right.
I don't like having light, like beaming right into my eyes, which of course
Right.
is where they always put the light. So that makes things a bit weird, but
Yeah.
whatever. I don't really care. I'm a bass player. What do you want to see me for anyway?
Right.
I know bass players should be standing in the shadows, right?
I know.
You know.
Right. Well, let me say, and if you have anything more to add, Bryan, feel free. But I just want to start to wind up, and I want to say, with the idea that I feel like we're all family, and we've been out there a lot together.
Absolutely.
As much as I like to tease you about stuff like that, and things that might be idiosyncratic about all of us on the road, you more than probably any other musician have always had our back, and we've always had yours, and you've been tremendously supportive of us, and likewise. But I always tell people, because we can get weird on the road and stuff, and I always tell people, I love this guy though, and he's got a really great heart, and at this core of it, like I said, there's a reason that you write my favorite songs, and it's because you write songs that touch people, out of that whole array of madness. And so I want to get that out there. And then,
Thank you, Travis.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know what? This is one of the things I've come to late in life. I think that someone said once that the root of all suffering is not really being who you truly are. And I used to kind of struggle against my particularities, and I'm very particular about a lot of things. And, about monitoring, about positioning, about just my whole life. I can be a little bit OCD. And I used to kind of feel like it was just a weird thing, and like I kind of had to hide it or bury it. And now I feel, for the first time in my life, just in the last couple of years, and part of it was making this solo album where I just spent years and years and years on it until it was finally exactly what I wanted it to be. I'm just more comfortable being that way. And, for some people, being around somebody like that, it can be a little uncomfortable, but I'm always striving to make things as excellent as they can, as great as they can possibly be. That's the whole goal. And so, I know that when we go out, that I have partners with you guys in making that happen. And you guys bust your asses. I mean, like, you work twice as hard as we do. And it's just amazing how much effort you put into the littlest thing. And to me, that shows incredible passion and care about what it is that you do, because that's the way I feel about everything, and I can't help it. That's just the way that I am. So I really do feel like I have brothers and sisters and a family out there when we're out there going through that stuff together, because touring is challenging, and you still want things to be great. You can't just go out there and be like, it's fucking good enough, whatever. That at that point you've lost.
Yeah.
So I don't ever want to show up like that.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't want to get down a rabbit hole. Somebody asked, could you and Jen define bass tone? But
then that's a huge discussion.
a huge rabbit hole.
Maybe we could have Bryan on again.
If Bryan's willing, we'll do it again down the road.
Who knows? We might have time.
Right? What are the chances?
I have a joke.
Okay.
I have a joke. What does a snail say when he rides on the back of a turtle?
What?
Whee! Thank you, Dale.
Ladies and gentlemen.
So,
I think we should wrap it up because it's late, and Bryan has been so gracious with his time, and we'll have him back and we'll answer bass tone questions. That'll be the whole show.
Before we go,
sorry.
Let me just put out there, we have, all us bands that are kind of forced off the road right now, any support is totally appreciated. We do have links for all ways to support TLB. And Bryan, where can people find you and support you?
You can find me at bryanbeller.com. That's just BryanBeller.com. And if you want to, Scenes from the Flood is still available on all, the web stores are still there. If you're into vinyl, there's a purple limited.
I need a vinyl copy, by the way.
I'm holding one for you. There's less than 50 purple vinyls left, and there's not much more of the black vinyls left. The pressing is almost out, and And I still have the web stores, they're still able to ship physical products. And if you're in digital, there's high res audio from Bandcamp, and it's all available at the shop at my page. That's bryanbeller.com. And there's links and all sorts of other stuff that you can find out there as well. Thank you, Travis, for the opportunity to pimp my stuff for a second there.
Oh, absolutely. And we're all in the same boat. All our links are in here. And if anybody if you've enjoyed tonight and you want to kick a few bucks into the tip jar.
Hit the tip jar.
Yeah, I mean, and then soon we'll be here every Saturday at 7 p.m. until we decide we're not, and at 7 p.m. Pacific. And then also sometime again soon I'll do some music, but I'm trying to upgrade the system even a little bit more and fix the issues that we had last week. So with that said, we usually sign off with the only music that we can sign off with, which is Dale Moon on the drums, and appreciate everybody for coming. Thanks so much. Thank you, Bryan. We love you. And we'll see you again.
Thanks, Bryan.
Bye, everybody.